Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Onion Soup, the show where we pull back the layers of metaphysics and reality in order to demystify spirituality. Today we have Miss Doris. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty wonderful. So, a moment ago, we were talking about the Moonshot Club. What is that?
Well, it's my group program. So imagine a world where everyone is shooting for the moon and they're going for their goals. Imagine being surrounded by all of these wonderful people who each have different goals, but they're all really going for it. And then they're sharing their experiences and supporting each other and making their dreams come true, all using the similar process of Moonlight guidance system.
How does that work when you say Moonlight Guided System?
Well, basically, we use the phases of the moon as a visual cue as to what you could be doing for your part of your goal at that time.
So, is that like the lunar calendar? I need more details.
Similar. Now, I'm not an astrologist or anything like that, so we don't follow the zodiacs or anything like that, but mostly it's when you have a new moon, then you're creating.
Mm.
That is when you're starting whatever project it is that you're working on that goes towards a larger goal. And of course, we have a course where you would develop your larger goal and break it into the action plan. And then the new moon would be the beginning of whatever that project phase is. And then you would go into the waning phase, which is when the light is building. And so, of course, that's the momentum. That's when you're building on your goal. You're working hard, you're pushing, you're getting things done. And then the full moon is the time where you might be doing your presenting. That's a great time to pitch something new or to negotiate or whatever face time that you might need to do. And then after that, in the waning phase, you're wrapping things up as the light is diminishing again. You're finishing things, you're tying up loose ends. And then just before you're back at the new moon in that waning crescent where there's just a sliver of the moon left, that is when you're relaxing and you're evaluating how the project went over that lunar cycle and deciding on what you're going to do next time, doing a ton of self care so that you don't burn out, and then get ready to make your plans for the new moon again for the next phase of your project.
So I actually really like that idea of going through the lunar cycle and using those phases as a marker for personal growth and professional growth. So when someone goes to that new phase, are we talking about a continuation or are we talking about a new project?
It depends on your goal, right? So depending on how it would fit in your larger vision of what you're going for. If your goal is huge, like if you're changing your whole life, then it's probably going to be a smaller piece broken down, right? Versus if it's a smaller goal, maybe it's just a small project that you do each month, right? Depends on how much you got done, all of that.
For sure. So Doris, how did you get started into doing this?
Well, I actually started out. I've been a very structured person my whole life, and that's been always something very important to me. So in my corporate job way back when, that's what I did. Right, I created systems and I helped make sure everything was running properly. And then I became a stay-at-home mom. I think I'm one of those few people who had key performance indicators as a stay-at-home mom that I created for myself just so I could keep the structure in the household. Kind of weird, I know, but that was important to me. So then, progressing through that as my kids grew, I pretty much was sleepwalking through all of that. And I was on autopilot. So it was just, this is the next thing to do. This is the next thing to do. There was never any thought. I gave away all of my power. I was not conscious about anything, and life was happening to me. Then I was feeling really unfulfilled, but on paper, I had a great life. I had everything that I wanted. So I had no reason to be feeling that way. So I just shoved that down and pretended that everything was fine because I had no reason to feel the way that I did.
Mm,
So one day we were evacuated from our home because of a wildfire. And that was my catalyst. Different people have different catalysts as to what changes them. For me, that was it. All of a sudden, what's important? And I really started thinking about this, and it really woke me up. And then I started taking steps to be more intentional about things. But you can only do so much on your own before you need someone to help you see some of the blind spots, right?
mm,
So that's when I hired a life coach. And she helped me see things, and she was always my cheerleader, but when I was being obstinate, she gave me the little tough love that I needed at the time, right? So then from there, I just progressed. And at some point, I finally realized, okay, well, my kids were older. I was looking to get back into the workforce. What was my purpose now? And she helped me to see what I wanted and really dig deep and know myself. And that's when I decided to become a life coach.
mm.
So that was 4 years ago now. And so I've been practicing as a life coach since I became certified. And it's been wonderful ever since. And like I said, I always liked processes. So when I started learning a little bit more about my own processes and creating my own frameworks and stuff, I also started on my health journey.
Mm.
And I was hearing some different health coaches talk about as we get older, as ladies go through menopause. And so when your cycle isn't as straightforward, um, a lot of women tend to stick with the cyclical process and use the moon cycle because it's very similar to a menstrual process, right? So if it works for health, like working out and foods and things like that, maybe there were some superpowers there. So I started researching, love process, love the systems, and I found this. And I started working on it, and I started finding that it was exactly what I needed. And then I started implementing it with a few of my clients, and they thrived on it. So I decided, let's make a club of people who want to realize their dreams, and let's use this process.
Wow, I love all of that. It's funny because I feel like a lot of us, we have our, let's say, like, good lives, but then we're not feeling fulfilled. We feel like there's so much more out there, there's so much more that we can be doing, and then, like you said, there's, like, that catalyst, there's that moment of, okay, it's not that I'm not happy, but I'm also not completely happy. So then what do I do? For me, it was, several years ago, I had just finished my degree in biochemistry, and I was gonna go get a PhD and all this other craziness, and had already gone through the military, and then decided I didn't wanna do any of that. I was living in a one-bedroom apartment, and I just decided I don't wanna do that, and I want to talk to people, I want to help people, I want to guide people, and now we're here, you know? So, with your program, I also love I love the whole moon, cycle. I also love how you brought up the menstrual cycle being linked to the moon. A lot of times when women's cycles seem off, if you actually pay attention to the lunar calendar, you'll notice that if it's off according to the moon phases, you can actually get yourself kinda back on track. Well, more so with the next cycle, because if you're already off, it can be a struggle, you know? But, so with your program and when you started implementing that with other people, what was that like for you? Because you already had the structure, but I feel like the thing about being a structured individual, you have to break down the structure in order to rebuild something different and something new. Was that a struggle for you? What was that like?
Um, Breaking down the structure, a lot of times with my clients, they didn't have a lot of structure in their life. So they were looking for something and they couldn't understand why they just were always spinning their wheels and not making any progress. They always seemed stuck somewhere. Or, some of them knew what they wanted and they just couldn't seem to get working on it because it seemed like something was always coming up, something was always happening. And when we started implementing some structure into their lives, all of a sudden, things started moving in the right direction. And of course, with that structure on top of it, you get the coaching. And so when you find an obstacle and you work it through with me, or any coach really, it's going to help you break down those barriers and see, okay, well, what's behind that?
Mhm.
And what's going to work? Because what works for me might not work for you, might not work for the next person. But here's a strategy, give it a shot, and then let's check it out. And then that's why I love with this moon cycle that we're evaluating. Okay, that didn't really work out for me, but I really liked this piece. So, okay, well, how can we shift this and change it so that this piece becomes a bigger focus,
Mm.
right? Or whatever that has to be.
Are there any common roadblocks that you've noticed with your clients?
Time management, a
Mm,
lot. Um, we're also busy, always, and fitting things in. And I'm finding that if you work on a priority based schedule, then even if you don't get everything done and you're only getting the things that are important to you done, there seems to be a little bit of alliance there. And um, when people are misaligned, a lot of times it's because they're doing all the things. They are super busy, but they're not always getting the things that they are finding important. It's what
mhm.
they think they should do. And that's like one of my trigger words. Well, I should, you know, do
Yeah,
this, or I should do that,
yeah.
or I
I feel
have
like busy versus productive are 2 different things.
exactly, exactly.
So when, you have somebody who is busy and not necessarily productive, how do you point that out to them, and how do you start to give them structure? How do you structure somebody who's never had it?
Well, and that's where this program comes into place. I have a course, and we go over the vision, and then we break it down into an action plan.
Mhm,
And then so that's the beginning of the structure. And then using the moon phases so that they know what to do when, and then we meet every week. And
yeah,
okay, this is working, this is not. How do we switch this up? And some people actually find that they don't even realize what their values are,
mhm,
right? So they think they know what they are, but then when they get right down to it, it's like, okay, well, why didn't you get that done? Well, this came up and that came up. Okay, well, what is it that is most important to you? And without judgment, because you're you and I'm me, and something that's important to me might not be important to you, and that's okay. That's beautiful, actually, that we have this difference and that we can still work together to find a solution,
mhm,
right? And so when you get that piece and you adjust, it's a slow process, and it has to be a slow process. And finally, when you get into that, you slowly start seeing how it works, and then it just becomes a part of your life.
mhm. You mentioned something earlier about at the end of the cycle, really taking some time to rest and relax. Can you dive a little bit more deeply into the importance of self-care?
Okay, so that is paramount, really. In today's world where we are all super busy, as we talked about, maybe whether you're productive or not, you can still burn out, right? And we want to prevent that. So that has to happen. Now, what self care looks like for one person might be different for another person, absolutely. And that's the thing; it has to be customized to you. Um, Part of what I also work on with the value based scheduling is also making your decisions ahead of time. So, creating routines that make it easy for you so you don't have to make a decision. I read somewhere we make something like 30,000 decisions a day. I, That's crazy. So if we have the opportunity to put those routines in place and know, okay, when we get to this time, we could have self-care every single day, of course. You know, even getting up and brushing your teeth and doing what you need to do to get yourself to work every day. That is self-care, right? You are taking care of yourself. But in that end period, it's extra.
Mhm.
So what more do you need to do? Some people like to, have extravagant little vacations every month. That's wonderful. If you can afford that and that is something that you want to do, fantastic. Some people choose to have a pajama day where they don't go out that day. As an introvert, that is huge for me.
That's me.
Yeah, and having a pajama day where you don't have any commitments, and anyone that you see is okay with seeing you in pajamas, you know, that's awesome for me. That's self-care. But you have about 3 days to a week of self-care. What are you going to do? And remember, you've planned all of this out during the new moon. So you already know when you get there, you don't have to make the decision. You've already made that decision. You know what you're going to do to take care of yourself. And of course, sometimes things come up and you have to shift and change, but you have a general idea. And that makes things easier once you get there, because at that time, your decision making skills are done. You're done, right?
I love that. So when I do talk to people, I also do coaching, and I tell people the importance of scheduling self-time, or I say me time. And for me, I've busy schedule, entrepreneur, I work at the hospital and do all these other different things. So you have to be able to sit down and schedule time with family, friends, and for yourself, or else you'll just burn out, you know? So when you have people, well, before I even get there, do you ever like get resistance from individuals when you tell them that they have to schedule time for themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, depending on who it is that I'm working with, there are some people who actually um, think that they're good at taking care of themselves, and that they're not overly busy, and that they are in constant overwhelm, so they don't do anything at all. So that's one side. Getting people to take action instead of taking it back. And then there's the other side where people are always on the go, always busy, and their life is going to crumble if they don't answer those notifications on their phone. You know, that is really difficult to give up when that's what you've been trained to do, right? So it's a matter of working through that programming. I actually have a system that I work through as well, where you examine. Um, it's a self-examination system, because you have a situation which is factual, right? This is what happened without judgment, and then you examine what your programming is towards that, and then that causes an emotion, and then that causes your behavior, and then that causes your outcome. So you're trying to change the outcome of being burnt out, then you have to change one of those pieces, because unfortunately it's cyclical, right? So that outcome will provide evidence to your situation that your programming was correct, and then you're just keep going round and round and round. So you need to break that cycle at some point. And yeah, absolutely, there's tons of resistance, and we slowly have to work through it. And people notice where it's coming from, and then they have to work through that, because we've been trained to do this for a long time. Some of us, like, I'm 49 years old. So I've been doing this a long time. Then I'm doing the same things. And it's like, um, if you think of like a dirt road that's been traveled on over and over again, those ruts get really deep, right? and you just keep going on them until at some point you bottom out your car,
Yeah.
right? And then you got to think of something else to do. We don't want to get to that point.
Mm,
So we need to create an alternate route so that we don't ever get there.
yeah. I feel like the hardest part about change is recognizing that something needs to change in the first place.
Absolutely. Especially if you haven't had that catalyst.
Yeah, if you haven't had that, and it usually takes an outside eye for someone to say, "Hey, this isn't right. This this doesn't look okay. You need to divert." So, I have a quick question about the program. So, is there any or do you teach or practice any form of, like, prayer, medication, spiritual beliefs, or what does that look like with the program, or if somebody comes to you with that?
We don't actually have that as a piece of the program itself, although that would definitely fall into self care,
Mm,
and that's definitely something that I would encourage everyone to do regularly because, of course, your spirituality, whatever that might look like, um, is paramount to taking care of yourself. Because if you if you let your spirituality go, you're opening yourself up to everybody else's beliefs.
mhm,
And that's a lot to take on. So, of course, we want to make sure that you are finding what is important to you and whatever spirituality that looks like, praying, meditation, um, just 5 minutes by yourself, being quiet.
mhm.
For a brand new mom, maybe it's going to the bathroom by yourself. For just having 2 minutes,
If
whatever.
you could get that for your babies.
Exactly, right? So whatever it is that you need for those few minutes just to regroup and make it happen. But I have to say, I don't have that as a specific piece.
Mm. So, do you also help individuals with their diet? So, if somebody has like dietary issues, because a lot of times people's energy levels dip because of what they put into their bodies.
Absolutely. Well, I agree with you. Absolutely, is what I was saying. However, no, I am not an expert as far as dietary or fitness or anything
Mhm,
like that. I would encourage someone to find an expert if that is something that's important. Um, but yeah, because whatever your energy is doing, it could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be spiritual, really.
yeah, interesting. So, with your clients, one of my favorite questions to ask people is, what's been one of the most interesting cases that you've come across thus far?
Goodness. I don't know about, well, one that was super touching to me. Um, he he was struggling with success actually,
Mm,
um, and we were talking about it, and he finally realized that he was worthy all on his own. That he didn't have to do anything to be worthy of love, to be worthy of attention or anything else. He was enough just because he existed. And when that happened, I mean, he cried, I cried. It was beautiful. It was just
mm,
phenomenal. And he went on to do many great things after that. But yeah, that was what was sticking for him, right? He was getting success, but he didn't think that he was worthy of it.
mm.
And so then he could embrace it. That was gorgeous. It was just fantastic.
Wow, honestly, that touches me.
Right?
Yeah, I think that a lot of us don't feel worthy and don't feel as if we're capable and we don't feel successful, we don't feel abundant. But when you open your eyes and look around you, you have so much growth, so much life, so much vibrant energy. You are successful, you are abundant, and you are enough.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I was trying to get through that without crying, but yeah, it touches me now to speak about it, and it broke me then. It was fantastic.
I love that. Well, Doris, we only have a few minutes left. Is there anything that you want to leave the audience before we go?
Well, I'd love for everyone to visit me. I'm at promptedcollective.com. I'm also available at on Instagram or Facebook at Prompted Collective. If you're interested in Moonshot Club, it's promptedcollective.com/, Moonshot Club. Um, yeah, reach out for a DM, or I'd love to chat. I love these conversations. I'm a bit of a podcast addict, so yeah, I love hanging out and chatting with people.
Yeah, for sure. I'm the same way. I love talking, and also I watch a lot of podcasts. Well, thank you, Doris, for coming on. And everybody, please go DM her if you, especially if you really need some help and you want somebody to talk to. You just have great energy about you, so I'm really excited for you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning into this episode of Onion Soup. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.